Hello, welcome to another edition of the Talking Basketball podcast. I am Mark.
I am Paul.
And we've got another guest.
Mark, we have got a huge guest.
How huge is the guest, Paul?
Look, we have got former Portsmouth FC basketball club, former Sunderland Saint, former Manchester Olympic Giant, former Kingston, former Worthing Bears, former Thames Valley Tigers, played for Great Britain, captain Great Britain World Student Games, and what he's done on the court and off the court absolutely gives him, without a doubt, BBL basketball legend status. So without any ado whatsoever, let me introduce our guest. And now, stand and cheer for your BBL legend, yet God, number 6, Steve Nelson.
That took me back.
That was a good one.
Took you back, Steve, yeah?
That really took me back. I had my boots, I was traveling again. You know, wherever someone would pay me, that's where I turned up.
Well, Steve, firstly, thank you for just gracing us with your presence on this podcast. You know, we definitely think absolutely hugely highly of you. The name Steve Nelson is extremely respected in Portsmouth, in Worthing, all along the South Coast, all up the UK. And yeah, thank you very much just for, you know, gracing us with your presence.
No, it's absolutely my pleasure. It's a chance to talk about, you know, a sport that's completely changed my life and set me in a different direction to what I could ever imagined. And it's had a knock-on impact into my own family. So really happy to sit down with you guys. And, you know, especially after listening to a couple of your other podcasts, listening to Jason and to Colin, I thought I had to come on and defend myself about, you know, some of the things Jason was saying about me as well.
I had forgotten all about that.
And defend my honour.
So let's get into that. What do you want to defend to Jason then?
There was a lot about me trying to throw the sort of rookie card to him after my first year, because having been the rookie, and it was just a natural passage of things, you know. Jason just didn't want to accept it. That's just how it works, you know. And also I have to say, the other thing I really wanted to defend myself is my, which is still, and I do joke about it, it's my most embarrassing moment ever. My first season at Portsmouth, where I only played a handful of minutes. You know, we had a star-studded lineup. I was this young kid from Birmingham that had been, you know, kept on from the previous Telford Turbos team that had gone bust. And I'm back here with you know, this team of superstars, where practice were my games in that first year. So I was a bit, as Jason has said. But anyway, it's getting near the end of the season. I think I've played 11 minutes in league games all season long, right? Not average, total. And we're blowing somebody out. And you know, I've been one of the 10 to dress, because only 10 guys are dressed in those days. And I'm going in the game, so I'm looking to see who I'm going in the game for and who they're guarding. And as I'm watching, I'm pulling my sweat stain, getting ready to go in the game. And I start hearing laughter. And everyone's laughing, and I look down and I pull my shorts down with my sweats. All I've got on is a jockstrap. So I did, Jason was right on that bit. I did flash my ass to half of the audience at the Mountbatten Centre, including the balcony, so it's probably more than half. So I did quickly call them back up. We happened to call a timeout right then. I couldn't tell you one word Danny Palmer said in that timeout. I won in the game.
Well, I mean, at least you had something on, Steve. At least you had something on.
That must have been the greatest timeout, like, conversation of all time. I'd love to have heard what Danny Palmer said at that moment.
Yeah.
I have no clue. All I know is it was the last time I ever wore a jockstrap. That's what I do know.
That was not the entertainment they were expecting, but that's the entertainment they received.
Oh, that's brilliant. Well, one thing Jason did say, he was adamant he didn't want you to find this out. And I don't know if you've heard this one. And this is where he brought 2 right shoes to one of the away games. And the first thing he was like, he goes, there's no way I can let Steve Nelson know about this. If Steve finds out, that's it. I'm in trouble.
Oh yeah. Rookie mistakes, man. You have to learn from them. And people are loud about them. Jason had it easy. I had a hell of a rookie year. Because I was just so I don't know, I'd hardly been out of Birmingham. Suddenly, I'd left home. My mum and dad expect me to try and go to university. I'm like, no, I'm off to the South Coast to go play basketball. Don't care, they're putting up in a house, getting a share of a car. I'm going, and this is a day. So I was just such an inexperienced 19-year-old, really. I wasn't streetwise. So I had to do a lot of growing up. I took a lot of ribbing that first year. And it was probably late in that first year, actually, that I realized sometimes you just got to fight fire with fire. And once you did that, it kind of just eased off. But it took me a while to learn that.
I suppose that's a good lesson, isn't it? It toughened you up, especially, I can't remember who I can recall saying this, but they were like, maybe it was from the last dance. Maybe that's where I've heard it from. But it was like, if you can't take it from me, your teammate, what are you going to do in front of 20,000 people and another team?
Yeah, definitely. And Jason thinks practice was tough. That first year, with that team of superstars we had, I mean, Joel Moore, unbelievable point guard in his prime, Alan Cunningham, Colin Irish, Carl Patrick Wells. We were just stacked. That team practice was unbelievable. And I turned up as a 19-year-old kid who'd never been told that doing weights and being strong was an important part of basketball. And this, you talk about nicknames. One of the first nicknames I got in Portsmouth was Bambi, because I was literally all arms and legs. But I couldn't do 10 press-ups. I arrived having signed a professional basketball contract. I could not do 10 press-ups. So when you do the drills, right, okay, that's it, you guys last 10 press-ups. They'd be laughing at me because I could not do 10 press-ups at the start of that season. So yeah, I literally got thrown around like a rag doll at times in practice. Michael Hales, we're good friends, known him for years, but he literally used to throw me around like a rag doll. We were kind of body opposites. I was this very skinny, skin and bone, kid that relied on quickness and timing to get my thing. And here's Michael Hales, this super strong, really broad guard. I'd try and get from him. He'd just throw his arm and I'd be gone. I'd be flying out of bounds on the floor. I spent a lot of that first year getting myself up off the floor to run back on defense or to run down on offense because I just got flattened.
So you obviously, as you mentioned, that you went from Telford to Portsmouth. Yeah. So that was quite a short transition, the Telford to Portsmouth.
Well, so I played. So if I rewind, I was playing school basketball. We'd moved house, so I had to move school when I was sort of 14, 15. I played basketball for the school. I played for. I grew up in Birmingham. I played for district, and Birmingham was split into 10 districts. So we then play in the inter-district tournament. They select the Birmingham team. They select a team for the Midlands. Never made it past the district team under 14s, under 15s. There was another kid always got picked in front of me. Still remember that. And then my teacher just happened to mention that there was a team based in West Bromwich that were looking for players. And he told me that they played at the Gala Bass in West Brom, and I think that's all he told me. You know, it wasn't like, you know, here's a link to the website, all of that. And basically, I went home, got out the yellow pages, found the number for the Gala Bass, called them up, asked when the junior basketball team trained and what day. I think it was a Wednesday. Still remember coming home from school as a 15-year-old, dropping my school bag, picking up my kit bag and saying, Mum, I'm going to basketball training. I won't be back till really late. I got on 3 buses. I travelled for an hour and a half, and I turned up in the gym unannounced and uninvited. And luckily, I got a positive reception. And that West Brom team, I played juniors for 4 years, and the 4th year, West Brom moved to Telford. And I was playing juniors and seniors. It was under 19, so I was playing for the junior team. I still remember, I'd only just passed my driving test. I remember playing in a junior game, I can't remember where it was, somewhere up north, and having to try to get back. And we actually, here's another link, we played in the velodrome in Telford. That was our home court, believe it or not.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Very famous place.
I had to fly back down the motorway from a junior game to make it to play for the seniors. And then, obviously, Telford went bust, got bought by Portsmouth. And then because it was past the transfer deadline, they had to keep the same team. So basically, they used to pick us all up in a bus. They used to pick me up outside my college. It was hilarious.
Yeah, I've heard about this. Like, they used to, like, taxi or bus you all down to Portsmouth, play, and then drive you all back up the next day or something like that.
Yeah, put us up in what we thought at the time was quite a nice hotel somewhere in Portsmouth.
That's got to be the old Holiday Inn, I'd imagine. That's where everyone went.
Like that. We'd play the home games, or if we had an away game, they'd pick us up, take us an away game. So I think we must have played a dozen games, more like that. And it was great, you know. They had the start of the Portsmouth had a decent crowd even then for those very early games, and we were terrible. We were really bad.
So at what point, like, I'd imagine, did you have a meeting with John Deacon at any point? Would that have been in that period, or would that have been when you transitioned? Because you were one of a few players who remained, right? Yeah.
There's me and Dave Harris, Buck Harris, who obviously had a long career at Leicester as well after leaving Portsmouth. So we were the only 2 players that were kept on from that original squad. And we just, you know, my conversation with John Deacon was a little different because he introduced himself to the group of us, obviously, because we were his team. He just bought us, so we met him as a group. He actually paid us a bit of, you know, expenses during that period as well, just to say as a bit of a thank you for the time and effort and energy we were all putting into, because we could all have just walked away. So, you know, and he'd have lost the franchise. So they were really nice to us at that time. And then I remember having a conversation relatively early in the summer where, you know, I found out that they were going to, you know, they wanted me back, but they were going to pay me absolutely peanuts. And I said yes.
I guess you're still 19 at this point, aren't you?
Yeah. So I'm like, my birthday is August 27th, so I was a really late developer as well. So yeah, I was actually 18, turning 19 when I came down to Portsmouth that first summer.
John Deacon must have gone, right, Steve Nelson, right, I've got peanuts or whatever it is. It's gone, brilliant. There's the future.
Yeah, it was that bit of dust left in his pocket after he'd paid for Colin and Alan and Dan Lloyd and all the other guns they'd brought in. So yeah, I think I'm pretty certain. I think I had a squad of 14. I think there's probably me and Andrew Bailey were probably the worst paid. I don't know. I'm not for certain and Andrew was playing juniors most of the time, but I was really poorly paid that first year. But then again, I hardly played in any of the games, so maybe they were justified in that.
Okay. There's one thing I just want to go back on, and it was something we've talked about with a couple of players, where we talked about like what players will do to actually be able to play the game. And when you said you had to get on 3 buses and travel, what was it, an hour and a half or something like that? So, I mean, that is some of the commitment. Remember Adam Riabi, he was saying the same thing, getting on a bus at like 5 o'clock in the morning just to play basketball.
Getting on a train.
Kind of, it's the, you know, like similar traits in people that they just want to play and just want to, you know, and they're the guys who end up playing professional basketball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'll tell you one funny story. Probably the following season or the one after, still playing juniors in West Brom. The 3rd bus I had to get home was from the middle of Birmingham. So I travelled basically from southwest Birmingham into town and then back out to West Brom, which is sort of north of Birmingham. So it's pre-season, so we're going really hard. And we finished a little bit late, so now I'm rushing, jump in the shower quickly, get the first bus fine, no problem. But I had a choice. If I got the second bus, that dropped me literally outside of my door. If I missed that bus and I had to get a different one, that wasn't too bad. It was a 10-minute walk from home. If I missed both of those, I'd have to take another bus that was about a 35-minute walk from home. So I get the first bus into town and I'm walking as quickly as I can back through town, and I see my bus coming on the overpass. It's not there anymore by Broadway. So I start sprinting to catch this bus. I get cramp in both hamstrings. And I'm standing there watching my bus go, knowing that at the end of this I've got a half-hour walk home.
Oh no.
But you're right, it's about commitment, and if you want something, you find a way to get it done and to make it happen.
Now, if I flip on your coaching hat for a second, if you have a player that does that and turns up to practice, you must be looking at them thinking, okay, they're in it, they're here because they want to be here. This isn't an easy option for them. They
100%.
Yeah, and that's got to say something about commitment, hasn't it? Like you said, you had to go to the yellow pages, look it up. I still love the fact that you said, I remember there's a guy who kept getting picked in front of me. And you're talking about juniors, and it's still like there. That sportsmanship, the competitiveness, because that reminds me of Paul, because he still gets bitter over, someone did that to me in a game once. That was 20 years ago. Let it go. Nope.
100%. I couldn't, and again, another memory from, when I was playing juniors, because I got a great reception. The coach invited me back. The rest was kind of history. But I remember sitting on the bench the following season watching this guy who was nowhere near as good as I was. Even as a 15, 16-year-old, I could tell he was nowhere near as good as me. Yet he's playing. I'm sitting there, why is this guy playing? Because they put him on the best player on the team and he locked him up. And so for me, that was, okay, ding. If I play defense, I'm going to play.
Yeah.
And it was literally, I can remember that moment of the penny dropping for me as to why that guy who could hardly make a layup was playing in front of me.
Oh, wow. That's, I want to say the nemesis is someone you actually thank because that was your learning moment. Wow.
100%. 100%.
You got to consider that now. Like when you coaching kids, really, it's just like all they want to do, just want to score. They just want to shoot threes, and it's like, look, get a layup and learn how to play defense, and we'll go from there. That's what I always used to say to them anyway. That's it. Everyone wants to shoot. Everyone just wants, all the young kids just want to shoot threes now. If you watch it, the first thing they do, they walk into a court, go straight to the 3-point line, airball.
I tell you, I've had a group of under 12 this year. I'm back coaching, having had a bit of a break, when my parents got a bit older and their health wasn't great. But I've had a fun year, and the season just finished. We finished second in our division.
Oh, nice.
We only lost, I think, two games all season in the under 12s division. But we played under 14s as well. And one of our first game of the season, here's one for you Portsmouth guys. We played Portsmouth Force under 14s, first game of the season. with my very young-looking group of under 12s, none of which have really hit that growth spurt yet. And we walked into the gym, and it was like we were playing the Monstars, man. Those guys were so big. It was hilarious. And, you know, we've got absolutely mullered in pretty much every game. But for me, it's about trying to teach these kids the principles of how we play. And whether you're up 40, down 40, or in a close game, there's some fundamentals here we're trying to learn. And we had a bit of ability, and we definitely got better as the year went on. But that took a lot of work. And I'll tell you one thing as a coach of young players, I would say, I would say to coaches, think very hard about introducing pick and roll offenses early on, because it's a lazy default. Go set a ball on the screen, right? You think about it when you watch junior basketball, how many kids just run to go and set a screen on the ball so that the one really good player they've got can get downhill and try and score. I challenge every coach out there to coach all 12 of your squad and to find offenses that mean all 5 guys on the floor have a role to play and get to make decisions, because that's what you're trying to teach kids. You're trying to teach them how to make the right decisions at both ends of the floor.
So instead of something like a pick and roll, what would you suggest?
Motion offense, give and go, or pass and screen away. Do anything but go screen the ball. We played the whole season at under 12s, lost 2 games at under 12. I coached. We lost 3, 1 game I missed. We lost 3 games all season. We have not set 1 ball screen the whole season. Our offense is predicated on spacing and movement. And I believe if you teach kids those things really early on, whatever system they go into, they can adapt. I get why teams play horns. I get it. Because you only need 3 decent players to play horns, right? You need a good ball handler, a decent screener, and someone who can space the floor. Right? The other 2 guys, what they do.
So what's the weakness of motion then?
Oh, there are definitely weaknesses, because you're going to expose a player's ability to handle one-on-one pressure, be able to deal with, make the right decision towards the next pass, judge if a guy's trying to jump the passing lane, but what it gives you are opportunities for back cuts, spacing, filling, movement, till you get a great shot, getting kids into position where they're driving downhill, the help comes and they make one more pass and the guy takes the shot. Make or miss, that's exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah, I have to ask you, Steve. Paul is quite hot on this topic. You mentioned something about playing Portsmouth Force and playing a few games and getting mullered. You've got a very specific thing about that, haven't you, with kids playing and seeing teams and the scores being quite...
I'm not a huge fan of big blowout scores, especially at youth level. And I was talking to the chairman of the Portsmouth Force, and I was saying I think we should introduce a blanket. If we go up by 40, the foot comes off the pedal, even if it is letting them walk and score, rather than go for the jugular, then kick them whilst they're down, then laugh at them. I am not a fan of that at all. And when I see a score line of like 159-0, I just think, what's the point? There's no point in playing that game, especially when I then see an article saying this is amazing, some player scored 78 points. It's like, man, I'm just not a fan of that at all, that part of the game.
I agree. The unfortunate thing in terms of our structure here at the moment, and again, I'm just back into it after a few years out, I don't really understand why we got rid of under 13s National League. Because it's not Portsmouth Force's problem. We've entered under 14 conference, which if they get into all the technicalities, tends to be a lot of year 8 kids playing in that age group, which is essentially under 13s. So why did we change it? And what it's meant is my kids, who were still on, legitimate under 12s, who we tried to stretch a bit because again, we won nearly all of our under 12 games comfortably, while trying to teach them all how to play the right way. And everybody, all 12 of the guys playing in every game, all those things. So it's not their fault. I think this is more about the system and understanding actually what is the structure we need at a junior level here that makes sense for the players, not one that makes sense for the administration.
Yeah. So it's agree, and it's competitive then.
And also that points difference thing as well. That's a whole thing, isn't it? Where they were purposely trying to get as many points as possible on the board because that made a difference at the end of the year. And you go,
yeah, that drives me nuts a little bit. I mean, I don't know what the ruling is now, but it was on points for the aggregate. So if you beat the team at the bottom of the league by 200 points and your competitor beats them by 190, well, you win the league. And I always just thought there must be a better way to do it. Maybe if not on the head-to-head, then go to third place. So you're being judged by competing the best teams rather than how much you can kill the teams down the bottom.
No, I completely agree with you. I think that makes perfect sense. And I don't really understand why we don't have under 13 National League. Again, without getting into all the politics, and again, you've seen I've worked at England basketball for 4 years. I was head of development there. Did a load of work in terms of setting up the regional structure, particularly for girls. So I had lots of conversations with National League about the role and purpose of National League, and how that needs to connect with and work with education. But what we've ended up with is essentially, really having to manage kids who sometimes are playing, 2 academy games in a week, and then they're turning out and playing National League on a weekend as well, sometimes for multiple age groups, where we need to be thinking about that balance of how much time you spend in competition and how much time you spend, perfecting your performance. That 10,000 hours thing is absolutely true. You have to put in the work so you can then execute it in games. Otherwise, what happens if all you're doing is playing games? You just go to your strengths. So I believe that really strong.
Yeah, it goes to hero ball as soon as if you're not practicing, everyone wants to just take that shot and off they go. And you can just watch a team, can't you? They just suddenly choke, and then everything crumbles and the structure falls apart, and then the ones who shy away from the ball don't want it, then it's just always going the same way.
Yeah, I mean, the NCAA women's final last night, I watched that, and South Carolina just absolutely second half definitely just locked Caitlin Clark out, and it was like, that was it. Literally, I was just watching the game going, Iowa really looks like a one-trick pony here. Like, they've got one of the greatest shooters in women's basketball, but South Carolina had 2 people defending her, and I think she scored 8 points or 9 points in the second half. I'm just going back.
They put bodies on her as well. It wasn't just like, we'll get some. It was like they physically had bigger players dominating them, and it's like they're locked out. They're toast. And then suddenly you go, well, what else is your offense? Is that literally your offense? Oh, okay.
Yeah. I couldn't help laugh when Steve was talking a little early when he was talking about motion and stuff like that. It felt like I'd just gone back 35 years and I was listening to the coach to the hoop camp. That's what it felt like. He's like, come on, move the ball, go into motion. I was literally just going, oh my God, I can hear him say that 35 years ago.
And also after our podcast with Jason, he sat down with you and went through a couple of plays, and motion was related to that as well, wasn't it?
Well, Jason,
he was literally drawing it out for Paul, drawing them out and saying, this is what we used to do.
He talked about this one play that you in Portsmouth FC days, you guys used to just drill over and over and over again.
Yeah, which was flex. And it's a universal offense that everybody wrote. Everybody in my generation grew up playing. It's kind of evolved a little bit, and there are slightly different versions of it now, but they're based on those same principles. It's about trying to get players to force the defenders to make decisions so you can work out where your mismatches are. And that might be in the flex offense once you've because essentially you've got 3 guys on the baseline, 2 on the on each side of the key, and 1 in the corner. And when the ball swings, he's going 3. You might be looking for him because he's a great shooter, or you might be looking for the guy that set the first screen because he's a great post-up guy. You know what I mean? So again, it was just one of those offenses where there were just loads of options that you could run off. But the thing I would say is, again, especially coaching kids, I've coached my own children, which had its challenges. I'm not going to lie, but we had some real success together and found a way not to bring it home and to leave it on the court, so to speak. But I can remember, at 13, 14, talking to Luke about, you've still got to make the right decision. Even if that guy misses a layup, if he's open ahead of you, you've got to pass him the ball because we might need him to make that layup by the end of the season. Teams are going to key on you, so we need other guys to be able to step up. And it's about just trying to build those messages in so they understand this isn't just about you and about you getting 40 points or whatever. This is about making the right decisions because that's what's going to carry you the furthest.
Yeah. How do you do that as a coaching your own children? Because your children have been very successful basketball-wise, it's fair to say. Mm. And how do you separate the father with the coach? Because that must be must be challenging.
And there's only a couple of times when there's been a challenge, but it was really simple. Did this with Luke, did the same thing with Kyla. On that first drive to practice, I said to Luke, while you're at practice, I'm coach and you are another player. I will treat you the same as the rest of the players. If you mess up in practice, I will punish you in practice. I promise I'll never bring it home. And I stuck to that.
Yeah.
And we only had one occasion when I was coaching and I'm talking to Luke and he yelled back at me in a game, sub. And he didn't go back in the rest of the game. And that was it. Got an apology, move on. Didn't take it home. So yeah, I think you just got to be able to separate the two, and we did.
I got to talk. I've got 3 children. My 2 oldest are 2 sons, and I was coaching National League under 12s or 14s. I can't remember, but both of them were there. And my middle child is free spirit is probably the word I'd use. He he will do whatever he feels like doing at that time. But it was great because it was the first practice, and I can't remember. He was just taught, and I said very similar thing to what you said to Luke. And he was talking away to someone, mucking about, but it was great in a way because I just went, George, sure, go and sit down, give me 20 press-ups, something like that. Mm-hmm. The whole team's like, and the whole team behaved from that moment on. And I was like, wow, that's great. That's great. It kind of got their attention.
Your Coach Carter moment.
Yeah. The only thing is with my oldest, James, I watched, I don't know why I wasn't coaching him because I was. And for this game, I wasn't. And he scored a basket and I just stood up and cheered and like what your parents do. Mm. And we got in the car after the game and he said, Dad, can you not coach me? And I was like, oh, okay, why is that? And he goes, because I really like it so much more when you're cheering me on the sidelines than when you're coaching me. Wow. And I just went, okay, I'll be the cheering parent. That's fine.
Yeah, and that's fair enough as well. And again, you also have to know when to let go. And
yeah,
I coached them both up to I coached Luke under 18s when he was 15. And then as soon as I turned 16, I had to let them both go, because they didn't need to be with me. They needed to be somewhere else with somebody else who could commit the time and energy and focus that they needed that I couldn't give them. So they're tough decisions. But again, with Luke, or both of them. So with Luke, he was the youngest player So we were playing under 13s and he was 11. So he was a year younger than most of the guys he was playing with. But I never had any issues of any night with any parents about favoritism or anything like that, because it's really clear what I'm doing and I'm loud enough about it that, you know, and my practices are open. Don't get me started on why, if you get selected to a regional squad, the parents can't go and watch. Please don't get me started on that. You know, my gym's open. My parents can hear what I'm saying to the kids. I'm asking them to do, so they understand when we get in the game and you get subbed out, you understand why. You know, so, you know, I've never had any issues with Luke as a younger player who earned his minutes on a really good team. And then with Carly, it was the opposite. She's the standout star on a really inexperienced team that's playing national, junior national league and women's national league, you know, and she's 14, 15, and she's one of our best 2 players on a women's team of at best 6 players. You know, so she was in a very different situation where parents appreciated what she had to put in, but she also had to be patient while the rest of her team learned to catch, to make a layup, all that stuff, when I could have been pushing on with her much more. You know, so again, it is horses for courses as well, I think. But I absolutely respect a kid saying, you know, Dad, I don't want you to coach me. That's all right.
Yeah, and like the relationship I have with both my boys, we talk lots. We're very open with each other. So when he said it, it was like, no problem problem whatsoever. Steve, whilst we were talking, I wrote down two points to what you were saying. So at what point in, I guess, as Luke growing up, so for any of our listeners, I'm sure you must know, we're talking to Steve Nelson. His son is Luke Nelson, currently plays for the London Lions. Yep. Current champions of 2024, entering the BBL playoffs in the top spot. At what point in his basketball journey were you playing against him and suddenly he was like, oh, he might be better than me here? Or, you know, when was it starting to get competitive?
Oh my goodness.
If we get a chance to interview him,
love this.
If you get a chance to interview him, we will ask him the same question.
At what point did he push you around and go, come on, Dad, come on, I want a game?
It was a pretty quick transition. So I remember about 13, there was a football tournament in a local park that he was involved in, and his sister was playing in, and we went and said, oh, let's play some one-on-one in the park, and I whooped him. I have to get that one in. 2 years later, 15, we went over to the park. I don't think I lasted 5 minutes trying to compete with him, man. He absolutely wiped the floor with me. So by 15, he was, I couldn't keep up with him. He's way better. He was way better at 15 than I ever was.
Wow.
I just imagine at the end, cheers for the game, Dad. Good job.
He was just laughing at me.
I think Luke in particular he's got actually got a really unique shot in the BBL, one of the most unique shots. But what I love about him, and I'm going to use, I was thinking about this on the way here. He's an explosive passer of the ball. Do you know what I mean by that? Like this season, he flies into the key, and all of a sudden the ball is going somewhere where you don't think it's going.
No, it's gone. Yeah.
But it's going. It's explosive is the only word I can think of. Just bam, and then Josh Sharma's coming in, or Morgan from the outside. Yeah. But he's an explosive assister of the game.
He is. I mean, he just reads the game really well, and I think, you know, he's also got an incredibly high work ethic. He puts in the time. You know, we've been in the gym with him. Kyler and I have both been in the gym with him when he's working out in the summer, and he's working on those passes where he penetrates at full speed, and he finds you, right in the hands in the corner as you flare into that spot, and then he'll work on the opposite where you drive baseline and you're finding someone. I've seen him put in the hours. There is no shortcut for it. He's worked on it. He's worked on the passes he wants to make, and being able to get them to guys on time. Now, it's high risk sometimes what he does, so we'll end up with the turnover here or there. But, you love playing with Lee because he's going to give you the ball when you're in the right spot, because he'll work out what the right spot is for you and I'll try and get it to you exactly then.
It's that iceberg, isn't it? Where we're just watching the game and we just see this drive-in explosive pass out, but there's all your hours and hours of dedication in the gym that no one sees. We just see that final product.
Time with the ball in your hand.
Yeah.
And just spending it, just being familiar with, if I shift my body weight just here a little bit more, that's going to give me access to spin more or do something like that. Do you ever have, whenever Luke and Kayla have been playing at their levels respectively, when was the point where you were like, okay, maybe I shouldn't be critiquing what they're doing anymore because they've now gone past a certain age and they're doing their own things, but do you still look at their, I'm surprised you passed it there?
So when Luke signed his first professional contract, my job was done. I don't give Luke basketball coaching tips or ideas. He doesn't need that from me. He understands his game, and in my view, I think he could have been utilised more at times. I think this year by the Lions, but he knows his game, and I don't need to tell him what he needs to do. So I don't. So the answer is, once they finish college, that's me done. So pretty much up until the end of his senior year, we'd speak after most games, and have some, have a conversation about it or message about it. And again, I think by the time he was a junior, and the same with Kyler, I'll try and pick one thing maybe that I might feed back to them on, and I'll leave it at that because there's no point. Again, they're both got great IQ. They were there. They understand as well as I do, and they both really learnt to understand their game. So for me right now, I'm you, Paul. I'm in the crowds, cheering him on. I might have a bit of a moan to him afterwards, which he tolerates because he's such a professional. He just gets on and does his job.
But as you mentioned earlier, both with Kyler and Luke, the way that they sat and sit in teams, one is sitting in a team that it has, in London Lions, there's a lot of depth in the Lions team. So how do, when you're coaching with players and things like that, how do people, I won't say stand out with those sort of things, but it must be very challenging in those sort of environments to get more court time in that when you've got such a deep arsenal, whereas at the same time, if you are one of the best players on that team, you're going to get high minutes. You've got to worry about your utilization. So there's different challenges, aren't there, for each of those things?
So I think everything isn't black and white, but I think it boils down to two approaches as a coach. There's some coaches that have a very clear understanding of the rotations and the timings of who's going to play, when they're going to play, when they're going to sub in, roughly when they're going to call timeouts. They'll have that virtually planned out in the game. It might flip slightly depending on exactly what happens in the game, but like foul trouble or whatever. But broadly speaking, all things even, this is who's going to play. So no matter what's happened in the game, this is who I'm closing the game with, right? And this is who I'm starting with, and this is who comes in at these times. There are other coaches that go, right, I don't care. I'm going with who's rolling in the fourth quarter. You're all going to get your opportunities through the first three. And in the fourth, I'm going to go with my gut about who I think is best to finish the game. And that then influences your choices earlier in the game, as well as in terms of how people are responding. And, you know, you might decide some people have a longer leash and some have a shorter leash. But again, it's just letting the team be really clear about what your objectives are as a team. That Paris team that beat London the other day, 3 minutes into the third quarter, there's 4 guys coming in off the bench, right? 4 guys. And it's not like they'd started badly. And even the first half, within 5 minutes, he'd introduced four subs into the game in the first 5 minutes of the game, because he knew he's going to use those guys down the stretch.
Yeah.
And they're going to contribute. And he wants all 9 of them to get rolling and get a feel for the game. You know, and he's stuck to that. So there's 2 choices. You know, I think Lions have got pretty much a set pattern in terms of how they're playing, and that's how it is. You know, and you just got to get on with it and take your opportunities as and when they come.
So, Steve, who would win? I think I know what you're going to say, but who would win 1-on-1? Steve Nelson in his highlight of his career, or Luke Nelson in the highlight of his?
Without any question, Luke. He would kill me 1-on-1. I might have the chance of stopping him occasionally, right? But I would struggle to score on him. I had nothing like the offensive. Well, I mean, it wasn't until my late 20s I developed a jump shot, you know, and could shoot from 3. Early, I relied on getting to the hoop, and I think Luke's too good a defender.
Right, the other thing I'm just going to go back, because you were talking about Kyla and how she was in a team that she was one of the better players and they were kind of playing catch up, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. I just want to talk about that because you actually did a lot of work to build up the women's side of the game as far as within BE and stuff like that, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. I did, yeah. So when I started at England basketball, I kind of ended up with a whole suite of responsibilities. I was head of development. I was responsible for schools, basketball, mini basketball, and that was interesting. We're going to go there today. I was involved in coaching pathway, officiating, just how that all connects to the International League. I was working right across the piece. And at the time, in terms of selecting England teams, there'd be the same interregional tournament that I think is still held now, used to be held between 10 regions for boys, but at the time there were only 4 regions for girls. So you split the country into 4, they bring 40 girls together, and then they pick a squad of 30 to make up the England squad. And I argued really strongly that we should build a girls' selection structure the same as the boys. It should be in the 10 regions, and we need to challenge our regions to go and recruit girls so that our England coaches have got 100 girls to look at to choose 30 rather than 40 girls. And in that way, then you can take some of the gambles on the really tall kid that's a bit gangly, but you know, if you stick with them, by the time they get to under 18s, they're going to be a really productive player for the team, while also taking the kid that's matured early and is really progressing really quickly, and he's going to help push the team. So I helped establish the 10 regions, and you know, that's become a national fixture. I remember Clive Allen's oldest daughter was one of the players selected in that first ever interregional tournament for girls, and went on to have a very good college and professional career. So that's one of, I see that as the start of women's basketball starting to grow in this country.
And I can't help notice, just for our listeners who can't see, we're on a what is this?
Google Meet, a video call.
Video conference. I don't know why that didn't pop in my head, but we can actually see a ball that Kayla got from scoring her 1,000th point in college.
Yeah, so and she set records at Florida International University for 3-point shooting, 3-point shots made 2 seasons in a row while she was there. And before that, she was at Pitt and led in 3-point shooting percentage. Went through some really challenging times health-wise, which I think has been well documented. And has come out the other side, went to FIU and played extremely well those 2 years. They set new records as a program in terms of the number of wins they've had. So yeah, she had a really successful college career, despite the end of it being impacted by COVID.
And we got to talk about her media influence as well. She's done, pretty well there.
Well, she's really only just getting started, I think. But yeah, she's done a number of the BBL games this season, and she's been doing the London Lions women's team in Europe. So she'll be doing the final, which is tomorrow, the second leg of the final, where the Lions women are down 7 at home with a chance to lift the Euro Cup and secure a place in EuroLeague, whether London Lions want it or not.
Let's get a little controversial, Steve. The rumour is that the women's London Lions team will not be playing in Europe next year.
That is the rumour.
Yeah. We don't know.
That's the same stuff I hear. So
yeah, it's sad if that's the case, because they have done so well. it makes no sense.
Yeah, I think the disappointing thing for them was getting knocked out at the start of the year of the EuroLeague competition. And I think this team was built to go and compete in EuroLeague. So, and again, as a sport, we've got lots of different pieces that are moving on the board at the moment, lots of them doing very positive things. We've just never had a shared vision and goal for the sport where we all recognise and understand our role in it, with the governing body really taking a leading role in that. And I'm sad about that. I think I did my 4 years, tried to leave a legacy, tried to do some things that I think have improved the sport from where we were. But I still am really frustrated, in what our sport could be if it didn't always feel like we were fighting against ourselves, or have people in leadership roles that maybe don't fully appreciate basketball, how we appreciate basketball in this country and what it could be.
It seems fragmented.
It is fragmented.
And it also seems not just necessarily in the UK, but in you look at every country, they all approach basketball in a certain way. Even if you're in Europe and elsewhere, where you'd say, "Oh, we're using FIBA rules," but they'll do it there's a slightly different feel to it. And then obviously in the UK, and then obviously NBA and all other constructs. It seems that it's, although a universal game and there's so many millions of people playing it, it's always in a different way, and there's a different, I won't say product at the end of it, but there's different experience for people.
But isn't that the beauty of it, though?
Yeah.
Isn't that the beauty of basketball? It is the jazz music of sport. It is improvisation.
I'm writing that one down. The jazz music of sport. I'm having that.
But that's the beauty of basketball. Even if you know exactly what play the opposition's running, you can't necessarily stop it.
Yeah.
Because it's not about the play, it's about how you improvise off the play, how you use the play to create an advantage for your team. And that, I think, is a thing of beauty. That's what I love about the sport, is that it is different. And that's why, when you do come together for a World Cup, it's worth buying a pass for the month it's on and watching some of those games, because there are some incredible teams around the world playing completely different styles of basketball based on their attributes as a country, and again how they've built on those, to try to win and be successful. I find it really fascinating, and I think that's what's beautiful about the sport. You can learn so much from it. And from other sports as well. I mean, Skyler's been talking to me about a couple of American football players that have started to sneak into college. A couple of basketball, American football players that started to sneak into college basketball.
Oh, right.
Just different things people are trying. And, again, you get crossover from rugby into American football.
Yep.
You know, excuse me. It is the future.
Oh, I'm gonna have to look up some American football plays now, see what's going on.
Well,
That's really interesting, though, isn't it?
it is. And do you know what I think is really interesting is you brought something that I had. One of the questions I had for you is relating to something that Paul's talked about, and you were talking about it with Colin and with Jason as well. And it was all to do with the difference between playing in Portsmouth at the time. So, you know, if we just pick Portsmouth, for example, you've played many teams, and the difference between homegrown talent versus the American import talent at the time. And when you see it in the league now, and you say, look at the BBL now, you have some of those same sort of splits, don't you? Where there is where's the homegrown talent, and you think, okay, talent like Luke, and then you'll have talent from like Sam Decker.
Well, I mean, Steve, in his career,
Yep.
went through a great example of that transition where you look at, I want to say late 80s, it was like 2 American players and then homegrown players. And then, I can't remember what it's called, but something happened in the 93, 94, maybe 92. The Bosman rule, that was it. The Bosman rule
was.
about the whole, you went from 2 to 5.
Yeah.
That was it. And, I mean, that was in the middle of your career, wasn't it? Or no, start of your career, wasn't it?
It was pretty much smack bang in the middle.
Yeah.
You know, it was, and I was involved in, we had a fledgling players association at the time, trying to negotiate with the league about the whole, you know, the Bosmans. For those that don't know what it was, that was the rule about freedom of movement in Europe. And there was a footballer, can't remember his first name, called Bosman, who basically went to the European Court and said, you are restricting my movement of and me selling my goods, my trade, anywhere in Europe, like any other sport.
Yeah.
And that's why now when footballers or any other sports person is out of contract, there is no transfer fee. You know, you can walk away. So that's one of the results of Bosman. The other was about the freedom for people in Europe to work anywhere in Europe. We're obviously out of Brexit now, and that's changed from that perspective. But what that meant in terms of European basketball was essentially they made, for European competitions, you could be from anywhere in Europe playing for you in European competition. Was one of the changes they made at the time. So that meant, you know, again, if I'm playing in France, rather than having to have 5 French players, if I wanted to go and get 5 Lithuanians to play in a European competition, I could do that. The French league put in its own restrictions in terms of maximum number of Americans, having to have a minimum number of homegrown players. The German league did the same. Turks, you can go on. They all had their restrictions. But what did we do? No, let's just get 5 Americans in. And I will tell you how it fundamentally shifted the league. So when I started, the way it worked was the coach got on the phone to all the English guys and tried to recruit a core of English players, knowing that they've got X amount set aside for their 2 Americans, and if they're lucky for a dual national, right? So they recruit their English guys, and then they go and get some Americans that would fit with whatever English players they could get. After Bosman, it flipped. Teams went out and recruited 5 Americans, right? Then there were 3 spots for English players over the age of 23 in each team, right? So that's 39 spots across the whole league at the time.
Wow.
If you're over 23. And then the other 2 spots were supposedly development spots for young players. Right? But essentially what it meant was if you were English and you wanted to be a professional basketball player, the top level in this country, there were only 39 spots for you, and you only had whatever was left in the budget of each team after they paid for 5 Americans. So, of course, what happened, we had a draining. Some of our best talent went to Europe, played Division 2, Division 3 in some cases, or dropped down and played NBL Division 1 and got a job. You know, so we had a natural drain of talent out of the top level of sport in this country.
That's the first time I've actually thought of those numbers. That is scary numbers.
I'd forgotten all about it until you started talking.
Well, it was because you meant something had mentioned it, brought up, and the way that was going, I thought it's so relevant, isn't it? Because of that where you've done so much work with establishing not just grassroots basketball, but getting not only the youngsters, but having this transition and this growth that you know, basketball in England can benefit, and that you're taking someone from the roots right up through to say go play on an international level.
Absolutely, and that's for me what is the purpose of a governing body. You know, it's to bring that sport to everybody, and give everyone opportunity to play their sport, and then showcase that sport in its brightest light. You know, those are the things we should be looking to do for our sport. And you know, again, the numbers, you know, Sport England's own numbers will tell you that basketball is the third most popular team sport in the country.
We've been saying this on the podcast for months.
Yeah,
and months.
It's like you see the numbers, and then they say, "Oh, there's X amount of million people," and it encapsulates everyone from people in these areas to impoverished areas. The access is there. The kids in schools. It's the number one team sport. It's all these things, and you go, why do you hit a ceiling at say 16 maybe, and then it just dissipates? It just suddenly goes boop.
But the other side of this, the UK is the NBA's biggest market in Europe.
I didn't know that.
Even though they moved to Paris.
Oh right.
The NBA desperately want to see basketball succeed in London, because for them it's a huge market. You know, they get more downloads, I think, of the NBA app. I can't think what it's called now.
League Pass.
NBA League Pass.
Pass, yeah. I think they get more downloads of League Pass in the UK than anywhere else in Europe.
Oh wow. Well, I'd imagine the Orlando Magic will be top of those teams.
No.
They may well be. Yeah, but it's just interesting though. But I think all of this for me just comes back to having some clarity about what we want to try to do collectively as a sport, and building some momentum around that, seeing the role of different stakeholders in the sport to contribute to that. And again, it's not about trying to control the minutiae and the detail. It's about creating that vision of a future that we can all buy into, and we can see, you know, collectively how we can carve our way through it. That's what I believe. You know, and it needs leadership. And unfortunately, and I'm quite happy to say this, I just don't think within the national governing body, we haven't got that right.
Is there
sorry, Mark, can I just stop you really second just to support something Steve said? Was the Bosman ruling was named after Jean-Marc Bosman, a Belgian footballer who took his case to the European Court of Justice in 1995.
Wow.
And the ruling allowed professional football players in the EU to move freely to another club at the end of their term of contract with their present team.
There we go. Jean-Paul, thank you very much.
Jean-Marc Bosman.
Yeah, the joke was that you're Paul, so I'm Mark, you're Paul.
Oh.
Come on, stay with me. So just on that, is there a, well, not say governing body, but are there other countries in Europe, for example, that I won't say get it right, because no one ever gets it right.
Is there a blueprint?
Yeah, because the one that we did with Simon, and he was talking, and Simon's based in France, and the way in which they were saying how even the facility, just simple thing as a sports hall, and the access and the way that teams locally got to manage it, and they just left, and you think, hang on a minute, that would just game change so much in just the UK on its own, because facilities are hard enough to find, but managing them and getting access is, but to have the teams control that would just be mind-blowing.
It is part of the challenges about building facilities, and again, we've seen, you know, a significant push in that direction from a number of BBL clubs, and I have no issue with that whatsoever. I think it's the right thing to do. In terms of is there a model? If I'm honest, I think part of the problem we've got is there are people that have been in key positions to make decisions that think the simple solution is just to drop a model from somewhere else, you know, verbatim into the UK and expect it to work. You know, we're not one of these European powerhouses of basketball, and it can't work in the same way. We have to find something that's a bit unique. But if you want to look at models in terms of how it works, the German BBL is it. You know, they took some really difficult decisions a few years ago, as I understand it, in terms of the number of German players that have to be involved in the squads, and they stuck to that. And the knock-on impact on the national team performance, despite Luke hitting an amazing basket to take us to Eurobasket a few years back, but and their poor performance at the World Cup last year, because they were dreadful. They were still at the World Cup. But that trajectory they've been on is incredible. But they've invested in their homegrown players, which at some point you have to invest in them. But all the Germans have done is take a bit of what the Spanish did and pay it forward. That's all the Spanish have ever done. They've just said, yeah, we don't care about all that stuff. We're going to focus on developing our players. And again, the lower down the Spanish league you go, the more influential their foreign players are. The higher up the league you go, the more influential their Spanish players are.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I don't think that's accidental.
I've never considered that, but I know in Turkey certainly it's a similar model. You get the same sort of thing, and it's, I won't say like not an insular league in a way, but they have that same sort of process, and a lot of money going in there, and it's quite a powerhouse in Europe itself.
But you've got to build a pipeline though. Behind the facade of the professional clubs, with stadiums, without stadiums, whatever it is, you've got to build a pipeline behind them. And that's the bit, we've got to work out, if our pipeline includes US colleges, academies in Europe, which, to be blunt, until we can offer something that is comparable, it should, then, what is it we need to do to make sure the programs that our kids are going to, we vetted them. Because I know I was one of those kids, right? 18, told, really wanted to go to the States, and was told, yeah, you're going to high school. And I'll send you to high school next year. Didn't happen for whatever reasons, never happened. But that was my dream. But again, I've seen players go to American colleges and come out 4 years later, and yeah, they might be a bit bigger and stronger, but essentially the game is no different to what they went in with. Whereas you've seen others that go in and progress, it's about building relationships. And if we do want to develop our players, then we should be looking to build relationships with certain programs at different levels. So we should have, I don't know, a dozen JUCOs that we're in contact with, a dozen D2s, half a dozen D1s that we're trying to build a pipeline and build relationships about them, helping us develop and support our players. If that's part of the pipeline, and we have to accept it's going to be, especially the amount of money that's in collegiate sport right now, then let's take advantage of that, rather than pretending it doesn't exist and those kids disappear, we don't communicate with them for 4 years, and then we wonder why they're not committed to the national team.
Now, the British game of basketball itself is its own thing, isn't it? It is unique. It has a different flavour, a different pace, a different type of game. There's a different type of physicality mixed with speed, and you see it when you see some of the players come over from college, and some of the current BBL players, they say, what's it like? And they say, well, the American game is a bit faster, but then they also don't have physicality in the same way, but it is more physical, but in a different format, and it's its own thing. So how do we communicate that to the world? I guess that's the challenge, isn't it?
By winning. You do it by winning, and you do it by developing players that can go and perform at the highest level. We've got a number of female players in the WNBA, playing in high leagues in Europe. We've had a number of guys playing in high leagues in Europe, up in the NBA. One at the moment, who's making a bit of noise with Detroit. So it's about showing that as a system we can produce kids. But one thing I would say, and I think Luke was a bit of a trailblazer in this, because before Luke, pretty much every kid that went to the States went to high school before going to college. Luke was one of the first that just went from sixth form here. So he did his sixth form in Henley and played for Reading Rockets for those 2 years of his sixth form. Played Division 1 men as well as played juniors. And he went from that straight to UC Irvine with the European Championships in the middle. Now, most kids up until then weren't doing that, whereas now it's the norm. It's the norm for kids to stay till they're 18 and then go to college. But if I go back 10 years ago, it wasn't the norm. You know, you had to go out to high school to prove that you could play in their system to then get recruited into college. But that I think has been one of the real shifts over the last few years, that we've proven we can at least develop kids up to 18.
How did Luke make that transition then?
Oh gosh. So the story for Luke was the European B Championships in Romania, under 16s, where, and I think, you know, for Luke, he was starting to come into his own, I guess, during that tournament. He was definitely one of the leaders on that squad. But I do remember after one of the games, just ended up, this guy who was the assistant coach at UC Irvine, actually, a guy called Ali Ton, at the time, came over and goes, "Oh, I really like your son. I really like the way he's playing." I was like, "No, you must be talking about Kingsley Okora. This is his dad." And I was with Kingsley's dad at the time, and you know, Kingsley's dad is only about 5'10", believe it or not. He was like, "No, number 5, Luke Nelson." He was at 5. I was like, "Yes, oh yeah, okay, yeah, that is him." But yeah, I'm really interested. And so we started talking then, but we had a number of other colleges at different stages that started to show a bit of interest in him, because he played in there was a tournament before the EuroLeague finals when they were at the O2. There was a tournament which England played in with Steve Butnell coaching them, against some of the top European club programs, and Luke really stood out in that tournament as well. So we had a number of teams that contacted us about him, you know, colleges that wanted him to go and play, some with different plans for him. He ended up going back to Irvine. We went on 2 visits. He could have taken a couple more, but we went to, oh, for goodness sake, Elon. Went to Elon in North Carolina, and to UC Irvine. And for Luke, it was his call, and he decided on UC Irvine.
Oh, I'd love to know why. What were the factors that made him go, yeah, that's why I went there. But also, just to highlight, and I don't know where I've read this from, and correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but Luke Nelson actually went into college basketball, and it's not like he just went into it. He went into it and he was a starter for 4 years in college, and he was part of the team that actually got to the NCAA March Madness tournament. And it was the first time that they managed to do that college managed to get to that tournament, and he was part of that team, right?
100%. He was the leader of that
wow.
team.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
He was a sophomore the year they made it to the tournament. But yeah, he was a 4-year starter. He went in with no promises, no guarantees. Russ threw him into the starting lineup. Russ Turner, the head coach. And every game Luke was fit, he started the whole of those 4 years. And you know, deservedly so. He was freshman of the year in the conference. His freshman year, I think they won the conference as well that year, but lost in the playoffs in the conference tournament. Then they won it again the next year. I finished second and on a tie, and went on to make it to the tournament. And he was, Luke was brilliant all through that. And even his senior year, he was injured. He had a hamstring injury, and you know what those are like, right at the start of the year. And so he only played, a couple of non-conference games before January, and then he ended up still getting Big West Player of the Year for his in-conference play because he was just unstoppable. It was great to watch him.
Out for most of the season and still gets Conference Player of the Year. That says a lot, doesn't it? Really? Yeah.
Yeah, there was some. I think Hawaii were, in particular, who were one of their main rivals, were glad to see the back of him after his 4 years because he'd had some ridiculous games against them over that time. But yeah, that was his story. But and again, he made his choices based on how he felt about the place, the quality of the team he was going to play with, the weather, all of those things impact on him. It just felt right to him. It was a good fit.
There's a great story there. There's a great story there. And I think after college, I think he was part of a couple of teams and then more recently the London Lions, I think.
Yeah. So he's been 3 years in Spain. He signed for 3 years with Gran Canaria. They loaned him out his first year to another Spanish First Division top level team. The second he was supposed to be with Gran Canaria, but I think they changed coach and ended up putting him out on loan again. And then he was, I'm trying to remember when he had his ankle injury. So he missed a good part of the season with an ankle injury as well. I think his second year, before he was then loaned out in his third year. So, and then he went from there to Germany and from Germany to France. And then chance to come home and go play for the Lions.
I mean, what an amazing early career, isn't it? Like that you're getting experience playing in all those different European leagues and then you bring all that experience back to London. And that must have been a great phone call when Luke phoned you up and was like, Dad, I'm playing an hour down the road. See you soon. That must have been good. You must think, oh, okay, I can, even a lot closer, I can see some of the games.
I think the first conversation he had about it, we'd actually been out to, we'd been to Cleveland to Colin Irish's daughter's wedding. So I'm her godfather, she's my goddaughter. So the whole family had gone out to her wedding, and then the four of us, plus quite a few of the Irishes, not the married couple, we went down to the Dominican Republic and hung out for a few days just to have some fun together because we haven't seen each other for a while. And I think while we were there, Luke got the call about the fact that London Lions were interested in him.
Oh, amazing.
That must have been so cool.
Yeah, that's the time you want it when you're with your family as well. That'd be brilliant.
It was a good conversation. So, yeah.
I mean, it must be challenging when you, obviously, you've been at several clubs yourself. It must be challenging making decisions about, is this the right step for me? Just because a contract's in front of me doesn't mean is it the right contract necessarily.
In Steve's career, I don't think he cared. Am I right? Am I wrong there, Steve? Like at the start of your career, I don't think you cared. You just wanted to play, right?
I just wanted to play. I was a happy to travel. If someone will pay me, I will go there. I think it's important to go somewhere where you're wanted. And I think I've experienced a bit of going places where I maybe wasn't wanted as much as I thought I might have been. I think the classic for me was, again, I know he's a very revered coach in the UK, Kevin Cadle, but I don't think I was a good fit for him. Yeah, that was tough. And that's why I ended up leaving partway through the season and going to Derby because, it wasn't working. And I guess he decided what role he wanted me to play in, and it wasn't the role I thought I should be playing in. So all of that came to a head, and I left.
Tell us about that.
So the short version is we've been playing in Europe. We brought in a guy called, I want to say Kenny Stansel.
Are these in the Butch Hayes days as well?
It would have been around that time when Butch was in the league at Birmingham. But we brought in this guy, and I, not just because of him, but I can remember going, I think we're gonna struggle. because I think, Cadle had brought back Dan Clark out of retirement as well to play just in the European games. And it just completely thrown whatever synchronicity we had at the time. And I remember we went to a team in Belgium who beat us. A close game, but we lost on the road to them. Came back home, thought we were going to give them a game. And they absolutely destroyed us. I think they beat us by 20, 25 in that little gym in Kingston. It was one of those things I will remember, Paul, is them sitting there singing, "Always look on the bright side of life" at the end of the game. They gave us they gave us a good hiding. But basically after that, because we didn't have European money coming in, they had to request that players would reduce how much money they earned. Proportionately, I thought it was going to be, but let's just say my salary was cut by more than 90%. And
wow! Bloody hell!
It was time for me to go. I was already just about paying for myself to have to get to practice part of the week time. But I was at university. I actually had a student grant, so that helps. Before the days of having to get a loan. So I had a bit of a student grant, and I was getting paid a little bit by Kingston, which meant it wasn't costing me to play. When he was going to cut my salary, it would have cost me to play. And I said, I can't do that. And Terry Mangham, was interested in me going and playing for Derby. That was a whole interesting, that was, if you can imagine, I used to leave college at 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon to drive up I was in West London, so I'd have to drive out past Twickenham that way, round on the M25, up the M1 because the M40 wasn't built then. So it'd probably take me about 3.5 hours.
Oh, jeez.
To get to Derby. And if I was lucky, I'd have 15 minutes before practice to try and loosen up and then practice on the Friday night, play a game on a Saturday, and we could be playing back down in London, having just driven up. I'd stay at a place in Nottingham, play the game the Saturday, and then the Sunday, my treat was to go to my parents in Birmingham for Sunday lunch, having had another training session in the morning with those players that wanted to turn up before then driving back to London.
That's too much.
Blimey, John Deacon's dusty pockets are looking pretty good at that point, aren't they?
Very good.
No, this was a few years after.
That's
John
what
Deacon.
I mean.
Looking back.
Yeah, looking back on that.
I don't know the answer to this, but when you were at Kingston, was Steve Bontrager there at that time still?
No, so although I will say Steve Bontrager is probably one of the most difficult people I've ever had to guard in my life.
Really?
It was unbelievable. The trick of it is, if I don't know what you're going to do, if I can't guess what you're going to do, I can't anticipate what you're going to do, it makes you even harder to guard. And with Steve Bontrager, you just had no clue when he was going to pull up, when he was going to drive, or when he was going to pass. So he had this way of keeping you off balance as a defender. So yeah, he was a handful. I'll put him. Butch Hayes is another one I would put as unbelievably difficult to guard. And there's probably a couple of others that I've had to guard, but those two would be absolute standouts.
Yeah, I mean, for our listeners, in the late 80s, 90s, Portsmouth FC Basketball Club, Kingston. What was the Kingston surname? Kingston.
I don't remember. Kings? Were they Kings then?
I'm not sure.
Kings or Knights or something like that. I
don't know. Kingston. Anyway, they were like our nemesis team, weren't they? And like Steve Bontrager was the pivotal of that. So everyone down the south didn't really like Steve Bontrager.
Nope.
I remember that he had like a crew cut, didn't he? He had like a crew cut. I can't remember. I know I've said this on an episode before, but I remember there was like my brother and a few of us were around, and they said to me, if you shave your head, you will be able to shoot like Steve Montrago. So okay, that's as easy as it is. So there.
My mum thought you looked like a little thug. She was absolutely shocked. Like, why has he done that to his hair?
To look like Steve Montrago, the villain against the Portsmouth FC basketball club.
But I was when I was at Kingston, I was there. The two main guards were Alton Bird and Ross Saunders.
Owen Bird.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Oh,
And then in the
wow.
back, so those two started along with Colin Irish, Alan Cunningham,
Oh my God.
and who was the fifth starter? I can't think who the fifth starter was. But essentially, early in the season, I was the first guard off the bench. And I'd sub in for Russ, and then Russ would sub in for Olsen, and then I'd sub back out for one of them. So I'd get my little chunk of minutes. But at some point during the season, they decided they wanted to promote Adrian Cummings ahead of me. Again, another one, rest his soul. So Adrian Cummings actually got promoted ahead of me and was playing ahead of me. And this goes back to, you either decide how you want your team to play and who you're going to play whatever minutes, or you react to what you guys are giving you, and you go with what you want, with who you think is going to be successful at the end. So yeah.
You gotta say, I gotta say this. Now, I know the BBL have only just introduced this season a Hall of Fame category.
Yeah.
And I think they've put 4 or 5 people in.
No, there's about 10, but there's others like from
the
administration
categories,
and refs.
yes,
and,
yeah. But the actual, like,
players.
say the men's game, there's like 4, something like that, from what I remember.
Yeah.
I think so.
You gotta argue, if that was established earlier, you've got to argue that team has got like 6, 7 Hall of Famers in it.
Oh yeah.
You've got to, including arguably 2 of the greatest ever BBL players of all time.
Yeah.
So, but you got to go right from when the BBL started, Mark. So, the Worthing team won the last ever Division 1 playoff trophy. That was the first of our 3-peat, and then we won the first 2 BBL playoffs. Right. So it's only, what's that, mid-90s?
Yeah.
So I think some of the legendary players you're talking about played Div 1 men, which is where they don't necessarily get the kudos that they should.
Got it.
Because
Yeah.
that's part of the really interesting thing. It's really you brought that up, Steve, because when we've looked through and you go back historically and you look at like newspaper cuttings, or someone's filled out we know Scoop, who did some of the wiki, for example, on Portsmouth Club. Some of the stuff on there, you think, well, it says the league started in '87, but it wasn't, because there was games before that, and then it changed again in '93, and then it's like step. It's where's the consistency?
And it's a shame because some of the history is lost there. Like I was looking at it the other day, and there was like things like there were certain games in BBL playoff history where they haven't got a record like who the MVP is, and I just looked at that and thought that was a shame. I mean, the Portsmouth FC basketball days, that's only documented because there's a guy who's literally, we just call him he's called Scoop. He was a journalist, we call him Scoop, but he has got such he's got a sponge for a brain,
eidetic memory, isn't it? Yeah.
And I mean, I mean, I could phone him now and say to him a date that you give me, and he'll go, yep, Steve Nelson caught the ball on the right-hand side, shot 3, went inside. He will literally go play by play.
But that was the game he was fouled out.
He got fouled out. He ended the game with 22 points. That's what his brain is. And he was the one who actually came up. He wrote the whole Portsmouth FC basketball wiki page.
I've seen it. I have been on there a couple of times, actually. Because on that little tiny picture of the Royal Albert Hall, I'm shooting the free throws.
Oh, right.
I'm almost certain that's the picture where it's me shooting the free throws. You can, but it's really grainy.
And there's someone walking just round by the backboard, I think, if I remember rightly.
I can't remember. I'd have to see it. But Steve, I've got a treat for you, and hopefully, Colin Irish is going to listen to this, and I've got a special treat for him as well. Bear with me. Let me find it. There is... Oh, where would it have come from? This Macca's videos. Where would that be? Did you know about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where would I see that?
Let me find it. Would be on the
You put it on
WhatsApp group.
What, the Fury, Portsmouth Fury one?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, let me find this thing because there's an old Portsmouth Fury player, and he's created a YouTube channel called, I think it's like Macca's videos or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But he's posting all these old Portsmouth FC basketball games.
Wow.
And let me find it because you guys will look at it and just laugh and smile and just go, remember when that happened.
Remember that horrible concrete court.
I think Steve Bontrager's there quite early. I'm sure he's there.
Yeah. Oh dear.
Do you remember that fondly, that court, Steve?
I do. In fact, I can remember a highlight that ended up, I think it was on South Today or something, of us. I think it was the Worthing Solent game. And there was a highlight where at the end of the game I got a little breakaway cheesy dunk, but he just kind of scraped in, but I made it.
Amazing.
And he made the highlight on the TV news. I had it recorded on a videotape somewhere for years, but goodness knows where it is now.
That's the big time, making South Today. That is it.
Here you go. I found it. This is so if you want to check out, this is on YouTube and it's called Mac Attack Vids. So that's MAC Attack Vids, VIDS.
Yeah.
And
we'll send you the link, Steve.
All right, brilliant. Thank you.
This is just the first one I clicked on. It says Colin Irish baseline dunk Portsmouth versus Kingston in 1986.
Wow.
There you go. You can see that, Steve.
Wow. I will definitely check that out. Definitely. That's Joel. Look at Colin with ups. That was a rare day.
So, I mean, just
Mac Attack Vids.
We've joked about the court, and Jason actually said, didn't he, about breaking his hand on that court when and that's what happened with it, and then he had his plaster cast, didn't he? Until
like I don't know what to say, like the tiled floor, isn't it?
It was tiled on concrete, wasn't it?
I think I've tried to blank all of those courts out of my mind.
But it has been a big step, hasn't it? That we've sort of started moving away from that sort of thing, because they were
horrendous. And as an athlete, you definitely felt it the next day.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I got the day my knees felt their best was about 2 months after my last ever game.
Oh wow!
Yeah. Up until then, I could not sit in a car comfortably on a journey with my knees bent without them hurting. And I do think a lot of that was because of the floors that we played on. They really did take a lot out of your knees. I mean, but I stopped. I was still quite young when I stopped playing, so touch wood. I'll still be walking around reasonably well for the next 20 or so years at the very least.
Well, we've got coming up. We're interviewing with someone relating to the flooring and the basketball courts, aren't we? And that's quite. I just find it's an interesting, not necessarily trajectory, but we've seen so many changes in lots of sports, but with basketball, there's not too many. It's tweaks almost, isn't it? It's the game is sort of relatively the same. Same as football. It's like there's a green pitch, there's the goals.
Yeah, the bounciest court I ever played on was the first court I ever played on, which was the Garladas in West Brom. So if you imagine, literally underneath the court, there was an empty swimming pool.
Oh, okay.
And they built a wooden floor over the top of it. It was almost like a trampoline. It was amazing. You felt like you could fly when you were in that gym. I dunked in there so much easier than I ever dunked anywhere else, and the rims were at the right height. But yes, the floor was literally, it was really bouncy without being unstable and feeling like you were gonna fall through it. But you got a nice kick off it when he tried to jump.
That was our feeling going on the NBA courts, just when you get to stand on the edge of those and you notice, wow, there's definitely give in these courts. There's
huge give. That was the one thing I remember walking out on that NBA court, because what you can do is in some of the games you can get like, you pay an extra $5 or $10 and you get to shoot a layup or something like that. No, yeah, it was a layup and only a layup. They were really strict on that. And
Tim didn't listen to that.
And yeah, we walked out. I mean, the whole Portsmouth Fury team kind of like pretty much walked out on the floor, and we started doing this layup drill kind of thing. And I could just remember the floor was so bouncy. And you've kind of mentioned it. We've got to highlight that story. So you were only allowed to shoot a layup, but there's a guy called Tim Arnold. He pulled up for a three, and as soon as he pulled up, no, swish. And my brother missed the layup. He missed the layup. It's so funny. Everyone's got to say like that for the next couple of days. We were like, oh man, it's good to score on an NBA court. And he was like, nah, screw it. Next home game, he just paid extra to get this ticket so he could go and say he could score.
He doesn't have 100% record, and that's the bit that
50-50.
I think he went another time, and he now he's hit 3 out of 4, so he's like 75%, but he still is not 100%.
Thank you very much for listening to this episode. That is the end of this part, but do not worry, because coming soon is the second part of this episode, and it will be available soon.